Welcome to another episode of Cataloging the Culture. I'm your host, Dr. Karlos L. Marshall, Director of Community Impact and Innovation here at the Dayton Metro Library. This groundbreaking and unique podcast focuses on amplifying the stories and experiences of Black men in libraries. We delve into their journeys, how they got into the profession, as well as the impact that they can have in ways that we could continue to foster community, growth, and learning opportunities for Black men within the profession, which is a library profession in which we remain largely underrepresented. This morning, I had the distinct privilege and honor to be joined by a distinguished guest, Dr. Anthony Wilson, somebody that's become a mentor to me, who's also a co-conspirator for change within the library landscape, and also has become even an uncle-like figure to me. Dr. Anthony Wilson is the Chief Operating Officer for the Columbus Metropolitan Library and is currently Council Member at Large for Grove City Council. Prior to joining the library, he was Assistant Chief of Police for Westerville, Ohio, Division of Police. Before working at Westerville, Dr. Wilson worked for the Columbus Division of Police for 25 years. A military veteran, he earned his bachelor's degree from Ohio Christian University, a master's degree from Liberty University, and a Ph.D. in organizational leadership from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. He also serves on the board of directors for Special Olympics Ohio. First and foremost, thank you so much for all your service that you've done in various fields, and I'm glad to have you here this morning. So how are you feeling today?
Man, I feel good. And first of all, I want to thank you, Dr. Marshall, for the opportunity to sit with you and have a conversation with you. And man, every time somebody reads that bio, I just, it's I told you about moments of reflection. It just, I'm like, who is that guy, considering where I came from and where I'm at today. But I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So, as you talked about, who you are and where you came from, let's begin to catalog your journey and your story. Just tell us about your upbringing and background, in the neighborhoods and streets of Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, yeah. So I am a proud graduate of Columbus City Schools. I grew up in the south end of Columbus. Never call it the south side. It's the south end. Single parent home. My mother raised four of us. And, my upbringing was there were some challenges, man. I mean, my father had addiction issues. We lived in a home where domestic violence became normal, a normal part of our lives. As a kid, watching your parents, argue and fight over money and addiction issues can be traumatizing. And so, we had to grow up the first part of our lives in that environment. And after they were divorced, there was a little bit of calmness in the house. And it allowed the kids to focus on different activities, going to the library, going to the rec centers and things like that. So, just my mother always instilled in us the importance of service, the importance of commitment, and the importance of dedication, which has stayed with us. And I say with us, with my siblings. My mother has a military background. My father had a military background. My older brother was in the military, and I was in the military. So we always believed in just service. It was shaky upbringing, but once we stabilized the home environment, everything started to fall in place.
Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that as well as your family lineage. So thank you all for your service, but also talk about, your experience in law enforcement, which isn't something that you see every day amongst other library professionals and colleagues serving more than 2 decades in law enforcement. So just tell us about that experience, how you got involved within that profession and, what you taken away and continue to carry forward from that profession.
That's a good question. I grew up, I didn't like the police. I had no desire to be a police officer. In fact, if I was going to do anything, it was going to be like firefighting, right? And, there was various reasons why I didn't really, care for the police, the way we were treated in our community by police officers. The fact that I didn't see a lot of police officers that looked like me. And so, I had no desire to do that. But I had a cousin that became a police officer, and she ended up getting shot. And she was the first female to be shot in the line of duty in Franklin County. And she had been 3 years on, and she got shot. And subsequently, she ended up dying from those injuries. I did a search of our family history and learned that my grandfather was a police officer in Columbus as well from 1937 to 1952. And so while I was in the military, my brother joined the Columbus Police Department. And as I was trying to pursue a career with the fire department somewhere, he kept telling me to apply, man, apply. Yeah. And so I applied for the police department, and, the next thing you know, I'm in the police academy and out on the street patrolling. And the one thing that I will say is I wanted to do it different than the way I experienced my interactions with police officers as a youth. I wanted to be someone trusted in the community, and I understood the importance of serving, everyone in the community with fairness and equity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, powerful story. Thank you for sharing that experience with your family's legacy and how that's impacted your trajectory. But let's, turn the page a little bit. So how did you really transition from law enforcement into libraries? Yeah.
So I was assistant chief of police in the Westerville Police Department in Westerville, Ohio. And I had a phenomenal chief who was really grooming me for a leadership position in the police department as a chief. But we had an incident that took place where two of our police officers were shot and killed, and it took so much out of us, to see the hurt, pain what the families were experiencing, but also as a small police department, every police officer felt that because it was like family, and you really realize, that you really don't have time to grieve and mourn because, people in the community want to do so much for you. But it was just one of those moments where it was time to move to something different, to do something different. I felt like I'd done my time there, but I experienced so much, some good times and then sometimes a heartache. And so Columbus Metropolitan Library had an opening for a director of safety and security. And I was like, man, I'm just going, this is a good way to transition out of law enforcement is to, go into the library. I love the library, as a kid. I actually studied for my promotional exams in the library. I would get some of the study rooms or meeting rooms and study for promotional exams when I was in law enforcement. And so, I applied for the position, and ultimately I was hired as the Director of Safety and Security for the Columbus Metropolitan Library.
It's just amazing how everything usually comes full circle when you're moving with conviction and following your purpose and vocational calling in life. And I know you've also held other roles at the Columbus Metropolitan Library in addition to safety and security. So what has that trajectory been like for you to now becoming the COO? And what does your role entail as a chief operating officer?
All right. So as a chief operating, I'll start there. As a chief operating officer, I am responsible for our human resources department, our security department, and our property management, which is our facilities, transportation, maintenance, and so forth. And then also have a DEI manager that reports to me as well. And so when I started working at the library, I, again, blessed to have a phenomenal boss, right? And everybody's familiar with Pat Lisinski. But really, Pat really nice and sort of took me under his wing and really taught me a lot about library from a leadership perspective, right? Because I know about leadership in law enforcement, but library leadership and engaging, people at different levels in the organization. And so I had a really good relationship with Pat, and ultimately, he asked me about the promotion to Chief Operating Officer. And, we took some time to think about it and think about the position. And I guess I should say before that, it was Chief Diversity Officer. So let me be clear. He wanted to bring a Chief Diversity Officer up on the leadership team. He knew I had the education background. He knew I had the qualifications because I had taught cultural diversity for years when I was in law enforcement. And so ultimately, I was promoted to Chief Diversity Officer, and then subsequently we changed the name to Chief Operating Officer, which was more in line with my responsibilities.
Absolutely. It was great to see you get that promotion. Certainly, from my perspective, well-deserved and long overdue with all of the different things that you had under your peer review and your belt. And talking about your roles as Chief Diversity Officer and that you still have a DEI role within your department. Can you talk to us about just the changing and shifting landscape related to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the library landscape?
Right. Well, I think for me, and you probably noticed, I kind of seen the writing on the wall several years ago when people started calling out DEI as something that was negative and something that was bad. And it was just one of those things where we felt the need to start to look at how we approach DEI from our organization's perspective, because DEI is broad, it's vague, right? I mean, you say that term and it can mean a multitude of different things for different people and different organizations. So we really had to drill down and say, okay, we understand DEI, but what does it mean for our organization? And so we started to make some adjustments internally, a few years ago to say, okay, we want to weave this into the fabric of our organization. We don't want to stand alone, this is DEI stuff. We want to say, okay, this is aligned with our values. When we hire someone, we want to hire someone that is a fit and an add to the organization. But we want to look at, demographics. We want to look at bringing in that diverse perspective, right? Whether it's, you and I, we're black men. You grew up in a different area than I grew up in. We're going to have different experiences and different views that we're going to bring to the table. And so we want to make sure that we kept that as a focus, not only with, race and gender and things like that, but also those different perspectives that are coming in that can help us really grow and elevate.
Absolutely.
So I hope I answered that question.
Oh yeah. No, that was phenomenal. Appreciate you, sharing your expertise on that. That's a challenge and struggle that I also know all too well. And you've also talked about just knowing leadership from various different organizational structures, from law enforcement to military to various different community organizations and agencies that you're involved in. But myself also being somebody that didn't come from a traditional library background, coming from higher education and small business development and nonprofits. The library world is certainly unique. Obviously, there's things that are transferable across any industry. But when you talked about Pat kind of taking you under his wing and teaching you about library leadership specifically, what are some of those nuances that you have kind of picked up along the years, just in terms about just cultivating leadership and buy-in and things like that across the library organization?
So one of the biggest things was engagement. In law enforcement it's different. Leave me alone, let me work, let me do my thing. In the library world, for me, it was more around engagement. Everyone wants to feel valued. We talk about DEI, that's a big part of it, right? Everyone wants to feel valued. Everyone wants to be seen. And so as a leader in the library, you've got to make yourself available. You've got to be relational. You've got to be approachable. And, people from all levels of the organization are going to want, some access to you. So it was making yourself available. And so, going out to, all the different branches and visiting staff and, making sure that you were engaging staff. We, our, monthly manager meetings, the CEOs leading those. And our current CEO has just taken it to a whole different level where we're spending days shadowing staff at branches. And to me, that was different. One of the biggest difference was really making sure that your team felt like they were included and they belonged in almost every aspect of the organization.
Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that. And also just talk to us about, some of the unique experiences that you've had. You spoke about Pat kind of taking you under his wing. Are there any other people that have kind of helped you along this journey and pathway to just get acclimated within the library profession?
I would say even our current CEO, Lauren Hagan, has been good at that. When I was in law enforcement, I was a part of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives and also the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice. So we always had organizations like that where I could go to black men and get advice and get guidance, get wisdom, right, on how to navigate spaces. And the library is a little different because I don't have that access, didn't have that access initially until I met, you, Felton, and different people, Kelvin, different people who I could really bounce some things off of, get some knowledge from. And so for me, it was like the CEOs were really an integral part of that, but also as I got to meet you all, and learn more about library because I didn't know it all, and understanding, some of the challenges that we face as people of color in library systems as well. Absolutely.
I remember us starting this journey talking about black men in libraries a couple years ago. And you were on the very first panel that I did at the Ohio Library Council with Bradley, with Felton, with Karlos from East Cleveland, but then we did that at the American Library Association as well, too, standing room only. So what are some of the challenges that you see black men facing within the library space? Obviously, we come from non-traditional backgrounds, but we know in terms of black men obtaining master's in library of science degree, they only count for 1% of people that hold that degree. So what are some of the challenges and unique opportunities that you see within that space?
I think it's just one of those, it's going to sound simple, but it's really not that simple, is that sometimes people just don't know that the opportunity is there, right? And so how do we get, and I think I shared this, at one of the panels, is how do we get that information out to young black men who are looking at career opportunities to say, hey, you may have never thought about this type of degree and this type of work, but there's a lot of benefits to this, and there's a lot of opportunity for you to grow and develop and elevate in a library system. I don't know that we're getting that word out. I was a recruiter in the Columbus Police Department, and we would travel all over the country and recruit. And people would be like, Columbus, Georgia, Columbus, and it's like Columbus, Ohio. But once we threw the benefits and the salary and things out there, and we talked about the different opportunities within that organization, people were bought in. And I think what we've got to do is, put you out there like we are, myself out there, and really engage young black men to say, hey, this is a great opportunity not only for you to have a great career, but a great opportunity to serve people in our community and really give young people hope when they see you in this position, trying to help them, learn to read or, help them with their resume or whatever it is you're going to do. I mean, it gives people hope when they see people that look like them.
Absolutely. And Columbus Metropolitan Library is a huge library system. We're pretty large with the Dayton Metro Library with 17 locations and branches and an outreach division. I think part of it is also not knowing what other career fields, even within the library professional, exist and what type of career trajectories they are. When you talk about us coming from non-traditional backgrounds, I think a lot of people think that everybody that works in the library system is a professional librarian, right? Even your current CEO, Lauren, is coming from academic and higher education background in the finance world. So, for our young folks or even our older folks and adults that are watching this podcast and wanting to know, well, what actually can I do within a library system? Just talk about the size and scope of the Columbus Metropolitan Library, how large are, and what type of roles do y'all have available?
So the Columbus Metropolitan Library, we have 23 locations. We're working on the 24th location in partnership with the City of Columbus. We have 900 employees. And so it's a really robust system. I always say we have to approach it as if we're a global organization because we're so spread out. And the benefit and the luxury of that is that we touch just about every segment of our community, whether it's socioeconomics, whether it's race, religion. We touch every segment because of the size and scope of our organization. But what I would say to young people who are looking at this opportunity, especially young black men, is we always we get to a point where we want to be mentors, right? Or we want to be teachers, or we want to be coaches. And so we have like youth services positions, youth services manager, and youth services, they work with teens, they work with tweens. But they're also, to me, they're like the informal mentor, right? And so you get a lot of teens that come in and they go straight to the youth services team. Mm-hmm. And they're looking for activities and things to be engaged in. They also are recommending books that they should read and helping them with their homework. Mm-hmm. Our school help centers, there's opportunities there where people can come in. And it's just a great way to serve. So those are some, we have obviously branch managers, customer service managers. Our customer service managers don't have to have like a library background or library degree. We created that about 4 years ago to give other people opportunity to grow within the organization without having to have a degree in library science or something like that. So, I could go on and on and on as far as the opportunities there. And we're just talking about in the library itself, right? Materials, services, handlers, things like that. And, people who are, putting the books in the stacks. But primarily what I would say is, look at your local library system, look at the opportunities that are within that system and see how you fit in that organization. Because I think sometimes, to your point, people always think it's just a librarian. But once you start to search the opportunities within library systems, whether small or large, ultimately you'll find something that you like to do. Even our maintenance techs, right? Yep.
Absolutely. That's a phenomenal advice. And also, when I think about it, you and I have had these conversations at the intersection of, diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as the human resources and the staff development piece. I always say it's one thing to recruit diverse talent; it's another thing to retain us. And I liken that to a lot of higher education efforts when they attempt to diversify, whether it's the student body or their faculty ranks, but sometimes they don't always have the necessary cultural and climate pieces intact from an infrastructure standpoint to support those individuals to where they're not leaving the organization or that they're matriculating through graduation. So what are some of those other retention strategies that we can take to retain black men once we get them into the organization?
Yeah. I think it was Peter Drucker that said you can't manage what you can't measure, right? And so data is very important when you really think about this, especially, and I'm talking about an organization that has 900 employees, right? We can get them in the door, but the key is that retention rate. And so we're not measuring. We're getting the numbers in and saying, okay, here's our numbers, right, from a diversity standpoint. And then we look at positions, right? But then also we got to look at exit interview information as well. So we look at that. And we also look at promotions from a different demographic standpoint. And so we try to measure everything just to make sure that not only are we bringing people in the door, but that they're staying in the organization and then they're elevating. So what do? We have, a learning and development manager that really focuses on engaging staff and encouraging them to seek promotional opportunities. They work very closely with our public service staff, right, to engage and identify people within the organization that has the skill set or may have that, that person's got it, that it factor, right? And we want to get them involved in some of our, courses that we have for new managers, right, or people that we've identified that are up and comers in the organization. And so, I think, going back to the engagement piece, that's where it really matters, because when we do new staff orientation, most of our executive leadership team members have a role to play in our new staff orientation. Mm-hmm. So people are meeting executives, within their first, month of employment. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're always telling them is, our door's open. You ever need to reach out to us, email us, come stop by our office. And so people feel important. If you're a new employee and you've been there for 2 weeks and you've got a CEO or somebody telling you, stop by and see me, mm-hmm. you feel like you matter.
Absolutely.
And, and we just keep that going throughout, the time that the person is employed in the organization.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. Love the approach that y'all take just to being accessible, because those relationships really matter, and that's ultimately what retains people as well as the cultural values of the organization. And now I also want to talk about just, we talked about the pipeline strategies and things of that nature, and as people are listening and tuning in right now, and they're probably thinking, why the library? So for you, what's the most fulfilling part of your job?
I would say, we always say the library is more than books, right? And we partner with so many different social service organizations in the community, from addiction services to, homeless coalition. And also we work with organizations for like ESL, so English as a second language. And I think it's just, to me, it's the collaboration with all the different organizations in the community to provide people with the resources that they need to elevate in the community, to get to where they want to be, to achieve that quote-unquote American dream, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have all these different resources within the library system, small or large, right, that can help you. And so I think that we are libraries as a whole are hubs, community hubs, where people can go and get the things that they need to be successful, and even to take care of their family, from snack times to, things like that. GED programs. When you see people that get their GED and the library was a part of that journey, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely, for sure. And kind of summarizing some of those aspects and your experiences as Black men in the library. You talked about your experience and how this has become a full circle moment. Can you think of any time or moment in which you were affirmed in your identity as a Black man within the library?
I would say this current climate, having really deep conversations with people who feel like our history is trying to be erased, right? Who feel like we as a people are being pushed, further and further down. To have people of various backgrounds, races, come to me and want to have deep conversations about that, not from a perspective of help me understand, but from a perspective of how do I support and how do I become an ally in this fight, because I see you, and it's important for me to be there for you. I would say that in the last year or two, that's been probably the biggest thing that stood out to me is the people who are coming out and saying, we're all in this together, and we're going to stand with one another and get through this. And you have helped me get through things. I want to help you now.
Absolutely. That's definitely very powerful, just that solidarity and allyship. And I would be remiss if I did not ask you, tell us what's one of your favorite books and or what are you currently reading?
Oh, man. Favorite book. I kind of told you about it before we started talking. Who Moved My Cheese is probably one of my favorite books, and the reason why is just, things in life are going to change. And you've got to be able to adapt and change with it, because if not, you're going to get left behind. And I took that, when I read that book, it was just on a whim, but when I read it, it helped me even to this day with how I navigate life. Man, see you at the top, Zig Ziglar. I mean, that was one of the first, like, quote unquote leadership books I read. And, because I was looking at ways to really help build myself up. And so that was one that really, really resonated with me. Those are in the early days. Now, what am I reading now? Oh, man. I had to go back and read Malcolm X. The autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. I had to go back and read that. I read that a long time ago, but in this moment, in this time, I wanted to read that book because there's a lot of insight in that book that's really relevant to what I'm kind of experiencing today.
Powerful. And as we pay homage to Malcolm X, who celebrated 100 years, or what I've termed 100 this year. And in closing, how can people connect with you and follow your work and all the amazing things that you do within libraries and beyond?
Oh, I'm, social media. I'm on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Social media. I have a public-facing social media account. It's not private. My life is an open book, so to speak. So there's multiple ways. Easy to find me. Anthony Wilson. If you do a Google search, and I hate to say that, Google search Anthony Wilson in Columbus, Ohio, Grove City, Ohio, you will find me. And please, I'm always open to conversating with people and gleaning from one another.
Absolutely, we know you're not hard to find. Dr. Anthony Wilson, the library legend. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think one of the things that I would just continue to reiterate is that the library has opportunities in so many different areas, and I would say just have opportunities for everyone to find something that is fulfilling and really gives them opportunity to give back to the community.
Again, thank you all for tuning in for another episode of Cataloging the Culture, where we seek to share powerful narratives and bring voice and visibility to Black men in libraries and to inspire the next generation of Black librarians and Black men within this profession by showcasing the meaningful and impactful work that we contribute within the profession and beyond, such as Dr. Anthony Wilson. So again, thank you all for tuning in and listening. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Karlos L. Marshall, and this was another episode of Cataloging the Culture.